This Valentine's Day, I have a confession to make. I am in love with the Mariners offseason. The Mariners had a sneaky good offseason, and in this video, I'm going to tell you why, and some things you may not have thought about when trying to evaluate the Mariners offseason before. But in the spirit of Valentine's Day, I think we need to be in love with it. And if you're lonely like me, don't forget to go ahead and head on over to the Mariner Mojo shop and purchase some of our sick merchandise as well as FOCO to get 10% off on your order following the link below.
Hello, I like money.
Let's talk about the first move of the offseason, which was acquiring Teoscar Hernandez. Shortly after the Mariners knocked the Blue Jays out of the playoffs, the Mariners went and traded for the guy that hurt them the most. I know there has been talk about Teoscar Hernandez and Mitch Haniger and comparing the two, but in my opinion, there is no competition. Looking at both players, Mitch Haniger and Teoscar Hernandez, Mitch Haniger has played in only 530 games over the past 5 years, the time that he was with the Seattle Mariners, and Teoscar Hernandez played in 583. Now, of course, the 2020 season was shortened due to COVID, but in those 5 years, Teoscar Hernandez has been better than Mitch Haniger in almost all of them. In 2022, in just 57 games, Mitch hit 246, 308, 429 with a 114 OPS plus. For Teoscar, he played in 131 games, he hit 267, 316, 491 with a 127 OPS plus. Compare that with a 131, a 146 in the past 3 years for Teoscar Hernandez, and he's been one of the most devastating right-handed bats in all of baseball. Sure, I think that Mitch Haniger probably has the better outfield defense, but overall, I think that Teoscar Hernandez is the better player. Looking at Teoscar's baseball savant page, I mean, how could you not be in love with all of this red? His exit velocity is in the 96th percentile, his max exit velocity is 94th percentile, hard hit percentage 98th percentile, his X slugging 95th percentile, barrel percentage 94th percentile. Someone like Teoscar Hernandez is just such a good player in the batter's box. Obviously, defensively, well, it's a different story. I am in no way, shape, or form trying to discredit Mitch Haniger, but he is a couple years older than Teoscar Hernandez, and as you can see, not as good. 71st percentile in max exit velocity. His sprint speed was way down from Teoscar Hernandez. His arm strength was all right. Barrel percentage 82nd percentile, X slugging 81st percentile, and again, not the best in terms of controlling the strike zone. So overall, I think it's safe to say Teoscar Hernandez is the better player and is especially more reliable than Mitch Haniger. Next up, we have Kolton Wong, and while you're not seeing a lot of great things out of his exit velocities or his hard hit percentage, you could tell that Kolton Wong knows how to control the strike zone. He's also won a Gold Glove multiple times, so you know he's really, really good defensively. And don't get me wrong, Adam Frazier was good at controlling the strike zone as well, but he provided nothing for the Mariners offensively. You can see his average exit velocity was in the 3rd percentile, barrel percentage 2nd percentile, hard hit rate percentage 2nd percentile. Adam Frazier was nothing, and if nothing else, at least Kolton Wong has been consistent. You know what you're getting with Kolton Wong, and while it's not an all-star caliber player, he's still a decent player. Now, of course, you've heard about the addition of those guys before. This is nothing new to you, and we know that, of course. With that being said, the addition of Luis Castillo cannot be overlooked. Yes, of course, the Mariners had him at the end of last year for a few months, but having him throughout the entirety of the season, that is honestly such a big deal. And don't get me wrong, yeah, the Mariners were going to have him in 2023 one way or another, but keeping him around for this long is going to be huge for the Mariners. They have an ace. They have a guy who can pitch at the top of the rotation every single year and has a legitimate chance to go out there and shove every 5th day. I also think that a full year of Julio Rodriguez is going to make a big difference. And you may be saying, Colton, what are you talking about? We had a full year of Julio last year. Well, kind of. In his first 20 games in the major leagues, Julio Rodriguez hit only 205, no home runs, a few doubles here and there, 9 runs scored, 30 strikeouts to only 7 walks. Now, I'm not saying that there's no chance that Julio struggles in 2023, because of course, Julio is going to struggle. Don't get me wrong, that is going to happen. But he now has a full year of success under his belt. Julio Rodriguez is now a complete player for the most part. He knows what to expect when he comes up to the plate. Instead of kind of sink or swimming in the first few months of the year, he's actually going to be able to take it and run with what he finished in 2023. Because of that, we're basically getting an extra month of Julio Rodriguez, because in 2022, his first month in the big leagues, Julio was nothing. Now, don't get me wrong, he still stole 9 bases and was a great player in center field. Don't get me wrong, Julio's awesome. But now you're getting a full 6 or 7 months worth of Julio Rodriguez, the player that we've all come to know and love. That's a big deal for the Mariners, having someone who's been consistent and can be consistent throughout the entirety of the year. And speaking of consistency, AJ Pollock has been the model of that. Mariners left fielders were atrocious last year. Jesse Winker, Jared Kelenic, I don't even know who else was out there. Abraham Toro once in a while, Adam Frazier. Yeah, Not a good start. And the addition of AJ Pollock to go along with Jarred Kelenic in left field gives the Mariners two things. One, a proven player that can play the outfield, someone who is a more steady competitor, someone who has been there, done that in the MLB. You know what you're getting with AJ Pollock. And two, it gives Jarred Kelenic the best chance to succeed. The Mariners did not have that last year. They didn't have anybody to platoon with Kelenic when they brought him up again, because obviously Winker, bad. And then anyone else that could play the outfield, bad. So Jarred Kelenic himself is the biggest X factor for the Mariners. If, and this is a big if he can find a way to hit for average this year, maybe make himself a contributor for this team, Jarred Kelenic is the biggest X factor for the Mariners, and I don't think anybody can deny that. And having a right-handed complement to him in AJ Pollock is the best possible chance the Mariners have at giving Jarred Kelenic a chance to succeed. There is no addition the Mariners could have made in the 2022-2023 offseason that would have been bigger than getting Jarred Kelenic to realize his potential at the cost that they're paying him. Not a single player. I'm talking Aaron Judge. For that much money, not worth it. I'm talking Trey Turner. That much money, not worth it. By adding AJ Pollock, the Mariners are giving their possible future the best chance to succeed. And again, like I said, this is a big if, but they also gave themselves an opportunity. AJ Pollock can play every day in left field if he has to. Let's say Jarred Kelenic is bad. AJ Pollock can play left field. Let's say Taylor Trammell comes in and is bad. AJ Pollock can play left field. Let's say Cade Marlowe comes up and is bad. AJ Pollock can play left field. All three of those guys plus AJ Pollock, you just are assuming that AJ Pollock can play left field, and even Sam Haggerty. I know Sam Haggerty can platoon with them as well. Let's say Pollock gets hurt, Sam Haggerty in left field. But you now have three guys that can be the weak side of that platoon. In Jarred Kelenic, Taylor Trammell, and Cade Marlowe, the Mariners are banking on one of those three players hitting, and honestly, how could you bet against that? The one move that's going to be really hard for the Mariners to replace, the one player that I think is going to be really tough for them to replace, and maybe they can't say they actually got better in that position, it has to be Erik Swanson. I mean, look at his Baseball Savant page. This is a dream right here. Look how red everything is for Erik Swanson. He reached his potential. Erik Swanson is someone who is probably going to be one of the better relievers in baseball next year. Will he repeat what he did in 2022? I'm not sure, but these numbers say there's a decent chance. But again, this is just the bullpen, and we know from year to year how different bullpens can be. Think about the 2014 and 2015 Mariners bullpens. 2014, they were some of the best in baseball. 2015, they were one of the worst in baseball. And the Mariners gave themselves a great chance to find the next Erik Swanson by adding Justin Topa, by adding AJ Puckett, by adding Casey Sadler back to the mix, by adding someone like Trevor Gott. The Mariners have a decent chance to find the next Erik Swanson in this group. And remember when I talked about the Mariners finally getting a full year of Luis Castillo? Well, he's not the only one they're getting a full year of. Remember, George Kirby made his major league debut in May, so that first month of the season, the Mariners didn't have George Kirby. They were relying on Marco Gonzalez and Chris Flexen to both be in their starting rotation. Now adding George Kirby to that starting rotation, with the likes of Emerson Hancock and Bryce Miller and Taylor Dollard and the rest all knocking on the door, the Mariners are in a really good spot. And this offseason was one of the most under the radar offseasons I think I've ever seen from a 90-win team, but also sneakily one of the best, because they didn't go out and spend $400 million on a guy who's going to be good for the next 3. They didn't go out and commit 10 years to Carlos Correa, who's going to have his ankle explode by what it sounds like within the next 4 or 5 years. They have the money, and don't get me wrong, they spent money. The Julio extension, the extension of Luis Castillo, and of course all these guys reaching arbitration, they're going to be spending money. They will in the next couple of years, and they don't want to overload their books by adding one of these other players when in the end, in 4 or 5 years, then you won't be able to add anybody, and then we'll be complaining about that. Let's say in 4 or 5 years, let's say the Mariners had signed Aaron Judge, for example. They gave him, $1 billion. Well, then in 2025, 2026, all of a sudden we're like, the Mariners are knocking on the door, man. Why did they not just go sign, Juan Soto? Well, it's because they now have like a $230 million payroll with everybody reaching arbitration, Julio's money kicking in, as well as this money they're paying Aaron Judge. It just doesn't make sense. Building up an effective young core, which is exactly what the Mariners have done, is the biggest thing when being able to sustain for a long period of time. That's why the Astros are so good. They had a young nucleus that they brought up through the minor leagues, and they didn't have to pay them that much money. That's why the Braves were so good. They had a young nucleus. They brought all these guys up through the minor leagues and they didn't have to pay them a lot of money. They got extended. They know how much money they're paying all these guys. And now they can go out and add the last few pieces they need. Whether that be like how the Braves added Sean Murphy or how the Astros this year went out and signed Jose Abreu. They're not bank-breaking moves, but they're moves that make these teams significantly better, and the Mariners are preparing for that. They're still a few years away from being able to have a complete team and only needing to add 1 or 2 guys each offseason to certain positions, but they're well on their way, and they would not have been able to do that if they spent a lot of money. The biggest move the Mariners made this offseason was not making a move. By sticking to this budget that they made for themselves, they now have the opportunity to go out and get somebody expensive at the trade deadline this year, depending on where they're at. Maybe Jared Kelenic doesn't hit. Maybe AJ Pollock doesn't hit. Maybe someone's hurt. The Mariners now have the luxury to be able to go get someone at the trade deadline this year that is making a little bit of money, and they could use that to their advantage to catch up to a team like the Astros. Baseball season is finally back. The Super Bowl's over, and now it's Mariners season. We actually have a prediction for who's going to make the 2023 opening day roster for the Seattle Mariners, and I think it's a good one. I want you to check that video out next. It's on the screen now. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.